There's 5 steps to really finding financial independence. Okay. So here I'm going to give you 3 different questions to ask for yourself. So I like to also give questions, thought-provoking questions for you to ask yourself. So the 3 questions I like to have people ask themselves regularly as you're like moving to a next level financially are these 3 questions. The 3 questions sound the same, but they are actually different. Okay. So the first one is, how do you define being financially healthy and strong? Give everybody a second to, right? So that's questions you want to kind of answer for yourself. How do you define being financially healthy and strong? And there's no right or wrong answers here. I mean, each person, like for one person, her goal was to retire strong. She was retiring in a couple of years. She had 0 money in the bank account. A year and a half later, by the time she retired, she had 10 months worth of bills. But her definition of retiring strong was that she saw people retiring and she didn't want to feel like she couldn't take a vacation or she couldn't go out to dinner, or her life felt smaller because she was retired now, right? So she wanted to position herself in a way where she still could keep advancing financially and her lifestyle not change just because she stopped working for someone else. So everybody has to define these things for themselves, but how do you define being financially healthy and strong? The second question, again, all 3 questions sound the same, but they're different. So you really want to kind of take time to ask yourself those questions. So the second question is, how do you define being financially independent? And then the last question is, how do you define having financial peace of mind? All right, so those are the 3 questions. How do you define being financially healthy and strong? How do you define being financially independent? And how do you define having financial peace of mind? Okay, so for myself, I don't like to put myself in a position where I am dependent on other people for my income. So I'm going to give an example here. So like right now with the property management, right? With I have certain clients who, have 10 or more. Okay. So here's the thing. I could be dependent on that income. So obviously we use that income to live and we use that income to build wealth, but I like to have different profit centers so that if something happens with one of those, let's say one of my investors decides he, gets mad at me for some unknown reason and no longer wants me to manage that property, right? If I'm dependent on the income that comes in solely from that property, then I've put myself in a financial situation, I feel like, where I'm almost a slave to my investor. So I read a book years ago called It's Okay to Leave the Plantation. And the thing that I began to pull from that is I always want to have just different profit centers going on so that I'm never really at the mercy of income coming in from somebody else, like me managing somebody's property. So one of the things I like to encourage people to do when you're building relationships because you'll need to build, if you're wanting to do real estate investing, you'll need to build a good team for yourself. So a lot of lenders don't like this, but I recommend more than one lender. I like to have a relationship between 3 to 5 lenders, and then in different areas, because what if something happens? I believe in not burning bridges, but building bridges. But sometimes you can't control. Here's what you have to know, where your responsibility begins and where it ends. That's another thing that you can use. Ask yourself when you're making financial decisions, relationship decisions, time management decisions, giving decisions, where does my responsibility begin here and where does it end, right? And so when you're talking about that, I don't personally like to have just one lender or one profit center, when you're building a team of people, because what if something happens and someone retires? It could be something as simple as that, right? They're getting ready to retire. And now I'm solely dependent on just one lender. When you're, that's for me, how I define financial independence is I'm not solely dependent on just one thing. And I try to get my clients to not solely be dependent on just one thing for their income, right? So what I do here with my coaching is I share real life examples. I share questions to get you to ignite your thinking. And then I share concepts and ideas so that you can be thinking about how you want to apply that for yourself, right? So everything I say can be general, but then I say, how do you apply this for yourself, right? So you want to ask yourself in your own personal life, well, where am I independent financially, and where am I not so independent financially, and what can I do to change that? Which is why I like to encourage people to go from active to passive income. Okay,